Will all the hype coming into UFC 148 surround a certain outspoken antagonist, an inevitable battle with a normally soft-spoken champion? There are a few hidden gems under the radar. Joe Cervenka is always paired up with Tyler Mason. And Tyler, that first gem coming out of the featherweight division, where former #1 contender Chad Mendes is in action for the first time since taking that devastating, brutal knee from the hands or the knees of Jose Aldo. But money will try to cash in against a former training partner in Dr. Guillotine himself, Cody Mackenzie. Can he halt Mendes' attempt to get back in that title picture?
It's possible, just not very likely. I mean, a lot of people think this is a mismatch for Mackenzie. They don't think he probably deserves to be facing the former #1 contender in Chad Mendes. That being said, Mendes is a wrestler. If he chooses to go for a double leg, he's open for the guillotine. I mean, and you've seen it time and time again that, Mackenzie is a one-trick pony, but he's able to pull off that one trick. I think Mendes got too much for him. I think if he keeps this on the feet, his stand-up is much better than Mackenzie's. And I don't think he's going to make the mistake that a lot of other wrestlers make and go for the takedown.
So like you said, Mackenzie maybe not worthy of this fight, but if he gets it, a huge win, huge upset. Mendes, on the other hand, he was that close to Aldo. He lasted around, which is saying something. If he wins this fight, how close is he to another shot at the title?
I mean, if you look at the lower weight divisions, the bantamweight, flyweight, and featherweight division, they're all kind of a little bit weaker. They're always looking for contenders. He is a name in that division. A win over a guy who was on the Tough Show isn't that big, especially Mackenzie. But they might want to throw him into the title picture again if he knocks off a couple, more marquee names.
All right, from there, a little Canadian content. TriStar's own Ivan Menjivar, fighting out of Montreal, looks to make it a perfect 4-0 to start his UFC career, but he will be in tough against Mike, don't call me Beastman Easton, who looks for a 7th straight pro fight win. Whose streak gets snapped here?
I think that Menjivar's streak's going to get snapped. I mean, he looked like he was in tight against John Albert before Albert went for that guillotine. He's able to turn it around. Easton, on the other hand, he's not. He hasn't lived up to his hype when he came in. I mean, everyone was expecting really big things from him early on. But, he's always in really great shape. He's got great cardio, very fast, very strong, just very consistent. And maybe he's not showing exactly what he has yet. He hasn't, fulfilled his true potential yet. But what he has shown us is he's very consistent and he can fight at the top level.
All right, in a division looking for contenders, a big win here. Menjivar's already reeled off 3 in a row. He's no joke. What would it do for Easton's career if he gets a win here?
Well, I mean, I think a big win here for Easton, they definitely might throw him into the title picture. Like I said, I mean, the lightweight divisions are the divisions where they're looking for contenders the most. His teammate, Dominic Cruz, the champion, is off with injury, and it seems like that injury might, keep him on the shelf for a long time. Yeah. Potentially, he could get thrown in there. I'd like to see him fight again before that, but potentially he could get thrown in there with, Uriah Faber or Renan Barão.
All right, let's stay in the lower weight classes. Gleison Tibau looks for his 3rd straight win when he takes on Russian prospect Habib Nurmagomedov. The 23-year-old has a perfect 17-0 MMA record, including that impressive submission win over Kamal Shalarus in his UFC debut. Can the Brazilian, via this hype train the UFC is really seeming to push?
Yeah, I mean, Habib was very impressive in that fight. That being said, Tibau, he's that guy. He's that guy at the top of the division that no one talks about. I mean, he's one of the biggest lightweights out there. He's fought the best, all over from welterweight right down to lightweight. He's fought some of the best in the world, and even in his losses against guys like Jim Miller, who are the top of the division, he's looked really good. So I think Tibau is kind of that sleeper contender. He's one of those guys that not a lot of people pay attention to. And I think the young guy in Habib, he just didn't impress me all too much, even though he did finish Shalarus, who's a tough finish. His striking didn't seem as technical as it could have been. So I got to go with Tibau on this one.
So Tibau is one of those guys, like you said, he's been around a long time. He is kind of a name. What does this do if he wins this? That's some impressive wins in the last little while. How close would he be to a title shot, or what does he have to do to get there?
I think it's pretty close. I mean, I think you'd have to get him to fight one of the top contenders, maybe like a Donald Cerrone or Anthony Pettis, one of those guys who are very close themselves. Maybe even a Gray Manor who just recently fought. So, I mean, if you put him in there with one of those guys, he gets a win over one of them, you definitely have to have his name in the kind of talk for who's next for the title shot after Mr. Nate Diaz.
So maybe one win away from a title shot. All right, let's round it out. This week it'll be BC's John Alessio, who has seemingly fought everywhere, including this is 4th stint in the UFC, amazingly enough. The Natural will face former WC contender Shane Roller, who's actually looking to avoid his 4th straight loss in the octagon. What's it going to be here?
I got to go with the Canadian. I got to go with John Alessio in this one. I mean, he looked pretty good in his fight against Mark Bocek, a lot more well-rounded, better able to deal with the grappling. He was still dominated by Bocek in the grappling aspect. But Bocek is a better wrestler, grappler, jiu-jitsu guy than Shane Roller. On the feet, I think is all Alessio. He's much more technical on the feet. Roller's more of a power puncher looking for the big knockout. And you know what? Roller's he's just not riding high right now. And I think when someone has the hunger that Alessio would have coming into the UFC again, and the kind of momentum, I got to go with John Alessio.
So Roller will, when it loses fourth, he couldn't really get it done in the WEC. Where does this put him? Is he out of a job if he loses this fight?
I think he might lose his job. I think that's just too many losses in a row. And when you're in the UFC, you got to win to stay. And unfortunately, if he loses this fight, he's probably going to be packing his bags and looking for a new home. And
especially in the stacked lightweight division. All right, let's recap. You're going Chad Mendes to get back into the title picture. Mike Easton to halt Ivan Menjivar's win streak. Tibet to hand his first professional loss to the Eagle. And John Alessio to perhaps send Shane Roller his walking papers. While last week you've got Silva over Son in the fight everyone's talking about. Tito to end his career on a losing note. Cote to reign supreme in his octagon return. And Damian Maia to get it done in the welterweight debut. Remember, this Saturday you can catch 2 hours of prelims live and in HD right here on Sportsnet starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then Monday, tune into UFC Central for a full recap of all the highlights from Las Vegas. Next week, we'll start breaking down the organization's debut in Calgary, that ever-changing injury-riddled card for UFC 149. Until then, I'm Joe Cervenka, Tyler Mason. See you in a week for UFC Calgary.